I am Sienna, 28 years old, and on the day I got married, my parents flew my sister to Milan because she deserves to be celebrated. The words came through speakerphone during my reception, my mother's voice carrying across the ballroom as 200 guests fell silent. I stood there in my wedding dress, champagne glass frozen halfway to my lips, while my father's laughter echoed through the speakers. Your sister just got promoted to creative director. That's worth celebrating. A wedding? You'll probably have another one in 5 years anyway. The glass slipped from my fingers, shattering against the marble floor, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I watched the champagne spread across the white tiles like blood, then looked up at my new husband Ethan with the calmest smile I'd ever worn. Around us, guests shifted uncomfortably, some whispering, others staring at their phones in horror as someone had apparently been recording my mother's entire speech. My maid of honor rushed forward, but I held up one hand, stopping her. Then I did something no one expected. I laughed. My parents had always made their preference clear. Vanessa was the golden child, the artist, the free spirit who needed support to flourish. I was just the practical one, the boring accountant who would be fine, no matter what. What they didn't know was that being the ignored daughter had taught me to pay very close attention to details, and I'd been paying attention to their finances for the past 3 years, ever since I accidentally discovered exactly how they were funding my sister's luxury lifestyle. Growing up in suburban Chicago, the favoritism wasn't subtle. When Vanessa wanted to study art in Paris at 18, our parents remortgaged their house. When I got into Northwestern's business school on a partial scholarship, they told me to take out loans because education is an investment I'd easily repay with my future salary. Vanessa's bedroom was twice the size of mine, filled with expensive art supplies and a custom-built studio space. My room had a desk from IKEA and a lamp from a garage sale. Every birthday, every holiday, every achievement followed the same pattern. Vanessa's art show openings were family events where mom and dad invited everyone they knew, renting out gallery spaces and paying for catering. My college graduation, they showed up 40 minutes late and left before the reception because Vanessa needed help moving to a new apartment. When I got my CPA certification at 24, making me one of the youngest in my firm, my mother's response was, "That's nice, honey. Did we tell you Vanessa's painting was featured in a local magazine?" I stopped expecting differently. I built my own life, made my own success, and kept my distance emotionally while maintaining the appearance of a dutiful daughter. It was easier that way. I dated, worked, saved money, and climbed the corporate ladder at a prestigious accounting firm. By 26, I was a senior accountant handling high-profile clients. I bought my own condo, paid off my student loans early, and started building real wealth. Then I met Ethan at a charity gala where my firm was a sponsor. He was a software engineer who'd sold his startup and now worked in venture capital. We bonded over shared experiences of being the overlooked children in our respective families. His parents had favored his brother, an orthopedic surgeon, while Ethan's tech success was dismissed as playing with computers. We understood each other in a way no one else could. When Ethan proposed after 18 months of dating, I actually felt excited to tell my parents. Foolish, I know. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment they'd show up for me. We met them at their favorite restaurant and I showed them the ring. My mother glanced at it briefly before turning to my father. "It's not as unique as the one Vanessa designed for herself, but it's pretty. When's the wedding?" "We're thinking next September," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "A year from now. We'd love your help with planning." My father cut his steak without looking up. "We'll do what we can. You know your mother and I are helping Vanessa with her gallery opening in Florence next fall. It's a huge opportunity for her career. My wedding is also a huge opportunity," I said quietly. "For me, your daughter." My mother reached across the table and patted my hand. "You've always been so independent, Sienna. You'll figure it out. You're good at that. Besides, weddings are just parties. Vanessa's art career could set her up for life." That night, I went home and cried in Ethan's arms. He held me and said something I'd never forget. "We'll make our wedding perfect without them. But if you want to make them see what they've missed, I'll support you however you need." The wedding planning became my project. I hired a coordinator, found a stunning venue, designed everything myself while working full-time. My parents came to exactly one planning meeting, spent the entire time on their phones texting Vanessa, and left early for a flight to New York where my sister was having some artist networking event. When I asked if they could at least help with the rehearsal dinner since that's traditionally the groom's family's responsibility, but Ethan's parents had already paid for the honeymoon, my father said, "We'll see what we can do." 3 months before the wedding, I was doing routine financial analysis for one of my firm's clients when something caught my eye, a shell company with suspicious transaction patterns. I dug deeper because that's what I do, and discovered the company was funneling money from various sources into personal accounts. Standard fraud case. I flagged it, reported it to my supervisor, and moved on. 2 months before the wedding, I was organizing our home office and found some old tax documents my parents had asked me to review years ago. I'd helped them with their taxes throughout college, trying to feel useful, trying to contribute. As I was about to shred them, I noticed something. The same shell company structure, the same suspicious patterns. And then I understood. My parents had been embezzling from my father's employer for 6 years. Small amounts, carefully distributed, hidden through a complex web of fake consulting fees and vendor payments. My father worked as a senior accountant at a manufacturing company. He'd been stealing systematically, a few thousand here and there, building up to significant amounts. The money went to fund Vanessa's lifestyle, her art studio in Brooklyn that cost $4,000 a month, her trips to Europe, her gallery showings, her entire existence as a struggling artist who somehow never actually struggled. I sat in that office for 3 hours, going through every document, tracing every transaction I could access through public records, and the information in those old tax files. $68,000 over 6 years. Not enough to trigger immediate red flags, but enough to fund a fantasy life for my sister, while I worked 70-hour weeks to pay off student loans. I made copies of everything. I secured them in 3 different locations, and I waited. The day before my wedding, my mother called. Honey, we have some news. Dad and I won't be able to make it tomorrow. My hand tightened on the phone. What? Vanessa got the most amazing opportunity. The gallery in Milan wants to do a feature on her work, but they need her there this week. It's too important to miss. We're flying out with her tonight to help set everything up. You understand, right? You've always been so understanding. My wedding is tomorrow, I said, my voice flat. We know, sweetie, and we feel terrible, but you have Ethan. And you have all your friends. You'll be fine. Vanessa needs us right now. This could make her career. Your sister deserves to be celebrated. I hung up without saying goodbye. Ethan found me sitting on our couch staring at nothing. They're not coming? He asked. They're flying Vanessa to Milan, I said. Tonight. He sat beside me, and I felt his anger radiating off him. What do you want to do? I thought about the documents locked in my safe deposit box. I thought about 6 years of theft. I thought about every missed birthday. Every dismissal, every time I'd been told I was fine while Vanessa needed more. I want them to remember this wedding, I said. I want them to remember exactly where they were when I stopped being understanding. The ceremony was beautiful despite their absence. Ethan's parents walked me down the aisle. My closest friends surrounded me with love. But when we got to the reception and I checked my phone out of habit, there was a voicemail from my mother. I already knew what it would say, but I put it on speaker anyway. And that's when 200 people heard my parents prioritize my sister's career over my wedding day. That's when the glass shattered. That's when I started laughing, because I knew exactly what I was going to do. The video of my mother's voicemail went viral before dessert was served. Someone had been filming my reaction and posted it to social media with the caption, "Bride's parents skip wedding to take sister to Milan." By the time Ethan and I cut the cake, it had 50,000 views. By midnight, it was trending with over 2 million views and thousands of comments calling my parents monsters. I didn't plan for that public humiliation, but I won't pretend it didn't feel satisfying watching the internet do what I'd been too well trained to do myself. Call out the favoritism. My phone exploded with messages from relatives I barely knew. Distant cousins and my father's siblings all expressing shock and offering support. Where had they been for 28 years? Ethan and I left for our honeymoon in Bali the next morning as planned. On the plane, I finally checked my messages. 43 texts from my mother, each one more frantic than the last. How could you embarrass us like this? Do you know what people are saying about our family? Your father's colleagues are sending him the video. This is so humiliating. Not one apology, not one acknowledgement that missing my wedding might have been wrong, just concern about their image. Vanessa sent one message. You always have to make everything about you. Can't you be happy for me for once? I blocked them all and spent 2 weeks in paradise, swimming in clear water and eating fresh seafood and having the kind of peace I'd never experienced around my family. Ethan made me laugh, held me when I cried angry tears, and never once suggested I should forgive them. He understood that some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness. When we returned to Chicago, reality set in. My parents had been calling my workplace, showing up at my condo building, sending flowers with cards that said, "We need to talk." I refused every attempt at contact. Let them sit with their discomfort. Let them feel what it was like to be ignored. 3 weeks after the wedding, my mother showed up at my office. Security called to ask if I wanted her removed. I almost said yes, but curiosity won. I wanted to see if she'd actually apologize. She walked into my office wearing expensive clothes, carrying a designer bag I knew cost more than my monthly mortgage. Money my father had stolen, though she didn't know I knew that yet. "You look well," she said, sitting without being invited. "Bali must have been nice. What do you want?" "I want to understand why you're doing this. Ignoring us, blocking us, refusing to let us explain." Her voice carried that familiar tone of martyrdom, like she was the wounded party. Explain what? That Vanessa's gallery opening was more important than my wedding? I kept my voice professional, the way I spoke to difficult clients. No emotion. Pure business. "It's not that simple, Sienna. Your sister has been struggling. This opportunity in Milan could change everything for her. We thought you'd understand. You've always been so independent, so capable of handling things on your own. I've been independent because I had no choice. You made sure of that." She waved a hand dismissively. "You're being dramatic. We've always supported you. You remortgaged your house to send Vanessa to Paris. You told me to take out loans. Vanessa needed help with her art career. You had a clear path with business school. You paid for her studio. I paid off $60,000 in student loans. She's an artist, Sienna. Artists need support. You're an accountant. You make plenty of money." She said accountant, like it was something embarrassing. Something beneath us. I opened my laptop and pulled up a spreadsheet. I'd been working on it during the honeymoon in my few moments of anger that needed channeling. "Let me show you something. Every birthday from age 8 to 28, every Christmas, every achievement. I've documented every gift, every dollar spent, every ounce of attention given." I turned the screen toward her. The numbers were devastating. Over 20 years, my parents had spent approximately $480,000 on Vanessa's lifestyle, education, and career. On me, $62,000, and most of that was before I turned 18. The disparity wasn't just noticeable, it was grotesque. My mother's face went white as she scanned the columns. "You've been keeping track? What kind of person does that?" "The kind who needs evidence when everyone tells her she's imagining things." I closed the laptop. "You made choices. You chose Vanessa over me, repeatedly for 20 years. Missing my wedding was just the most public display of a pattern that's been ongoing since we were children. That's not fair. We love you both equally. You flew to Milan instead of attending my wedding. Those are not the actions of a parent who loves equally." She stood up, her bag clutched to her chest like a shield. "I came here to apologize, but I can see you're not interested in reconciliation. You'd rather hold a grudge and make us look bad on the internet." "I didn't make you look bad. I just stopped hiding what you've always been." After she left, I sat in my office for 20 minutes, letting my heart rate slow. I'd won that confrontation, but it felt hollow. Of course she wouldn't apologize. Of course she'd make it about my reaction rather than their actions. I pulled out my phone and called Tyler, a former colleague who now worked as a forensic accountant for a federal agency. We'd stayed friendly after he left my firm, occasionally meeting for coffee to discuss complex cases. Hey, Sienna, how was the honeymoon? Perfect. Listen, I need advice. Hypothetically, if someone discovered evidence of embezzlement, what would be the proper channels to report it? There was a pause. How hypothetical are we talking? Hypothetical enough that I want to make sure I do everything correctly. By the book. No room for mistakes. Okay, well, hypothetically, you'd want to gather comprehensive documentation first. Bank statements, tax records, any paper trail you can find. Then you'd report to the company's internal audit department if they have one, or directly to law enforcement if it's serious enough. The FBI handles significant white-collar crime. Are we talking significant amounts? Hypothetically, around 70,000 over 6 years. Possibly more. He whistled softly. That's felony territory. Multiple counts of theft, fraud, tax evasion potentially. You'd want to be very sure of your evidence before making accusations. I am, hypothetically. Then my advice would be to organize everything chronologically, document how you discovered it, and make sure you're not violating any confidentiality agreements or laws in the process of gathering information. If this is related to your work, you need to be clean on your end. It's not related to my work. It's personal. Another pause. Sienna, are you okay? I'm perfect. Thank you, Tyler. That night, I spread all my documentation across our dining room table. Ethan came home from work to find me surrounded by papers, highlighting and cross-referencing. What are you doing? He asked. Building a case. He set down his briefcase and came to stand behind me, reading over my shoulder. Against your parents? Against my father specifically. My mother probably doesn't know the details. I showed him the trail of fake vendor invoices, the shell companies, the carefully structured withdrawals. He's been stealing from his employer for 6 years. The money funded Vanessa's entire lifestyle. Ethan pulled up a chair. You're going to report him? I'm going to give him a choice. I looked up at him. I'm going to show him that dismissing me, underestimating me, treating me like I'm invisible has consequences. He taught me to be good with numbers. He just never considered that I might use that skill to see what he was hiding. What kind of choice? The kind where he learns that the daughter he ignored has more power than he ever imagined. I leaned back in my chair. I'm going to send him this documentation. All of it. And I'm going to tell him that he has 1 week to confess to his employer, arrange restitution, and accept whatever consequences come. If he doesn't, I'll report him myself, but I'll also make sure everyone knows that the money he stole went to fund Vanessa's luxury lifestyle while I worked 70-hour weeks to pay off student loans. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. You're sure about this? Once you do it, there's no going back. I've never been more sure of anything. He nodded slowly. Then I'm with you, whatever you need. I spent the next week perfecting my documentation. Every transaction traced, every fake vendor identified, every deposit into Vanessa's accounts correlated with a withdrawal from the company. I even found records showing my parents had paid for her Milan trip using a credit card they'd opened in a business name. More fraud, more evidence. On a Wednesday morning, I had everything couriered to my father's office. Not his home, where my mother might intercept it. His office, where he'd have to open it himself. Inside the package was a flash drive with all my documentation, a letter laying out exactly what I'd found, and my ultimatum: confess by Friday at 5 or I'd report him myself. I also included one personal note. You taught me to pay attention to details. You should have paid attention to me. Then I waited. My father called at 2:15 that afternoon. I was in a meeting with a client, so I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 2:30, at 3, at 3:15. By 4 o'clock, I had 12 missed calls. I didn't listen to any of the voicemails until I was alone in my office at 5:30, door locked, prepared for whatever he'd say. The first voicemail was panicked. Sienna, we need to talk. Call me immediately. The second was angry. How dare you threaten me? After everything we've done for you? The third was desperate. Please, honey, let's discuss this like adults. There's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, just consequences. He showed up at my condo that evening. I watched him through the security camera, pacing in the lobby, running his hands through his thinning hair. He looked older than I remembered, diminished somehow. The building's doorman called up. Miss Sienna, there's a Richard requesting to see you. Should I send him up? My father's name was Richard. I'd gone 28 years rarely thinking of him as anything other than Dad, but hearing his actual name from the doorman made him seem like what he was, just a man who'd made terrible choices. No, I said. Tell him I'm not available. He says it's urgent, a family emergency. It's not an emergency. Please ask him to leave. I watched through the camera as the doorman delivered my message. My father argued, gesturing emphatically, but the doorman stood firm. Eventually, my father left, shoulders slumped, defeated. Ethan arrived home an hour later with Thai food. How was your day? He asked, kissing my forehead. My father got the package. I gathered. He set the food on the counter. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. And I was. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one scrambling to explain, to justify, to make myself smaller. I'd laid out the truth and given my father the choice to do the right thing. What he did with that choice was on him. The next day, Thursday, my mother started calling. I let those go to voicemail too. Sienna, your father told me about these ridiculous accusations. You need to stop this nonsense immediately. Our family doesn't air dirty laundry in public. Your sister is devastated. She had nothing to do with any of this, and you're trying to ruin her reputation. Please, honey, think about what you're doing. You're tearing this family apart over money. We can discuss this like rational adults. Not one of them asked if it was true. Not one acknowledged the evidence. Just demands that I stop, that I be reasonable, that I put the the family back together like I was the one who'd broken it. Friday morning, I checked my email to find a message from Vanessa. The subject line read, "How could you?" I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity won again. She'd written, "Mom told me what you're accusing Dad of. I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to stop. Dad would never steal from anyone. He's the most honest person I know. If you're this jealous of my success, we can talk about it. But destroying our father to get back at me for having a career you don't approve of is sick. Get help, Sienna." Seriously. The audacity was breathtaking. After 28 years of taking everything, she thought this was about jealousy. She had no idea her entire life had been funded by crime. No clue that every gallery opening, every trip to Europe, every month of her expensive studio had been paid for with stolen money. I replied with one sentence, "Check your bank statements and ask Dad where the deposits came from." At 4:45 on Friday afternoon, I was on a conference call when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Parking garage. Level 3. Now. My father." I told my colleagues I had an emergency and ended the call. Ethan was at work, so I texted him my location and what I was doing. If my father was desperate enough to ambush me in a parking garage, I wanted someone to know where I was. I found him standing next to his car, a 7-year-old sedan that was starting to rust around the wheel wells. Not the luxury vehicle you'd expect from someone embezzling $70,000. But that was the point, wasn't it? All the money went to Vanessa. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "We don't. You have until 5 o'clock to confess, or I report you." That was the deal. "It's more complicated than you understand." "Explain it then. Make me understand why you stole from your employer for 6 years to fund Vanessa's lifestyle, while I worked myself into the ground to pay off student loans you refused to help with." He looked around the empty garage nervously. "Your mother doesn't know about the money, I mean. She thinks I got bonuses, that the company was doing well, and I was rewarded for my performance. So you stole and lied to your family. That's your defense?" "I did it for Vanessa. She's special, Sienna. Her talent, her art, it's something rare. I couldn't let her potential be wasted because we didn't have money. And what about my potential? You didn't need help. You were always going to be fine. You're practical, hardworking, responsible. Vanessa is fragile. She needs support." There it was, the core belief that had shaped my entire childhood. I was fine. I didn't need them. I was the daughter who could be ignored because I'd survive anyway. "So you committed multiple felonies because Vanessa is special and I'm not?" "That's not what I said." "That's exactly what you said. And you know what? You're right. I didn't need you. I never did. But that doesn't excuse what you did. And it doesn't mean I'm going to cover for you now." He moved closer and I instinctively stepped back. "If you report me, I'll lose my job. Probably go to prison. Your mother will lose the house. Is that what you want? To destroy our entire family?" "I'm not destroying anything. You did that yourself. I'm just refusing to hide it anymore." "Sienna, please." His voice cracked. "I'm begging you. I'll do anything. I'll confess to your mother. I'll cut Vanessa off financially. I'll apologize for missing your wedding. Whatever you want. I want you to confess to your employer. Take responsibility. Face consequences." "I can't. They'll prosecute. I'll lose everything." "You should have thought about that before you committed crimes for 6 years. I checked my watch. 4:58. "You have 2 minutes. You're really going to do this? Turn in your own father? You really missed my wedding for Vanessa's gallery opening. We all make choices." At exactly 5 o'clock, I walked away from him and drove straight to the FBI field office. Tyler met me in the lobby. "You're sure?" he asked one last time. "I'm sure." He escorted me to a conference room where 2 agents were waiting. For the next 3 hours, I laid out everything I'd found. Bank statements, tax documents, the trail of fake vendors and shell companies, the correlation between my father's thefts and my sister's deposits, the timeline showing 6 years of systematic fraud. The agents asked detailed questions. They took copies of all my documentation. They verified that I'd obtained everything legally, that I hadn't violated any confidentiality agreements, that my own hands were clean. By 8 o'clock, they had everything they needed to open an investigation. "This is substantial," the lead agent said. "If everything checks out the way you've documented it, we're looking at multiple felony charges. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. What happens next? We'll verify your findings, obtain warrants for financial records, and likely make an arrest within the next few weeks. You'll need to be available to testify if this goes to trial." "I will be." I left the FBI building feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. The daughter they'd dismissed as fine, as capable, as not needing attention had just systematically dismantled her father's criminal enterprise. Ethan was waiting at our condo when I got home. "It's done?" he asked. "It's done." He pulled me into his arms, and I finally let myself feel the weight of what I'd just done. Not guilt, not regret, just the massive shift in power dynamics that came with refusing to be dismissed anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "What have you done?" I turned off my phone and went to bed. The FBI moved faster than I expected. 9 days after I filed the report, agents executed a search warrant at my father's workplace. They seized computers, files, 6 years of financial records. My father was arrested at his desk at 11 in the morning on a Tuesday. The company's head of security called me that afternoon to confirm that I was the one who'd reported the fraud. "We're grateful," he said. "This could have continued for years if you hadn't come forward. I'm glad I could help. The amount is actually higher than you documented. We're finding additional fraudulent transactions going back 8 years. The total is closer to $112,000. 8 years, $112,000, all going to fund the golden child's fantasy life while the practical daughter worked herself ragged." My father was arraigned the next day. The charges were extensive: wire fraud, theft, money laundering, tax evasion. Bail was set at $50,000. My mother couldn't make it. Their savings had been drained funding Vanessa's lifestyle, and with my father arrested, my mother had no access to the stolen money. He spent 3 days in county jail before a bail bondsman agreed to work with them. The news spread through our extended family like wildfire. My mother's sisters called me, horrified. My father's brother called to tell me I was destroying the family. Cousins I barely knew sent messages ranging from, "How could you do this to your own father?" to, "Thank you for having the courage to speak up." Vanessa's response came via a 10-minute voicemail left at 2 in the morning. She was crying, incoherent, screaming about betrayal and jealousy and my cruelty. "Do you have any idea what you've done? she sobbed. The gallery in Milan dropped my show. They Googled my name and found articles about Dad's arrest. They said they can't be associated with scandal. 3 years of work, Sienna. 3 years of building relationships and creating pieces. And you destroyed it in a week because you're jealous that Mom and Dad love me more than you. I listened to the entire voicemail once, then deleted it. She still didn't get it. She still thought this was about love, about competition, about sibling rivalry. She had no comprehension that her entire career had been funded by crime, or that I'd spent 28 years being systematically neglected so she could play artist. 2 weeks after the arrest, my mother showed up at my office again. Security called, and this time I said to let her up. Not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I wanted to see what she'd say now that she couldn't deny the truth anymore. She looked terrible. Hair unwashed, face bare of makeup, clothes wrinkled. "I need your help," she said the moment she walked in. "No, Sienna, please, I'm begging you. Your father's lawyer says the case is strong. They have all the documentation you gave them, plus more they found. He's going to prison. We'll lose the house. I'll have nothing. You'll have Vanessa." She flinched. "Your sister can't help. She has no money." Interesting. Where did all that money go that Dad stole? I didn't know he was stealing. She said it like a shield, like it absolved her of everything. "But you knew we were spending beyond our means. You knew he didn't make enough at his job to pay for everything you were giving Vanessa. You chose not to ask questions because you didn't want to know the answers. That's not fair. None of this is fair. You and Dad deciding that one daughter deserves everything and the other deserves nothing. That's not fair. Missing my wedding for Vanessa's gallery opening? Not fair. Spending $500,000 on her life while telling me to take out loans? Not fair. I'm done being the family scapegoat who's supposed to be fine with scraps while Vanessa gets the feast." My mother's face hardened. "I came here hoping you'd grown up enough to put aside this vindictive tantrum and help your family. But I see you're still the same selfish, cold girl you've always been. I'm exactly who you made me. Independent, self-sufficient, capable of surviving without you. You wanted a daughter who didn't need you? Congratulations. You have one." She stood abruptly. "When your father goes to prison and we lose everything, I hope you remember this conversation. I hope you remember that you chose revenge over family. I chose truth. You chose favorites. We both made our choices." After she left, I called Ethan. "Can you meet me for lunch?" "Bad morning." My mother stopped by. She wanted me to help them financially. Maybe testify on my father's behalf. What did you tell her? I told her no, and I feel completely fine about it. He laughed. "Good. You want to go somewhere nice? Celebrate your spine?" "Yes, somewhere expensive. Somewhere my parents would have taken Vanessa, but never me." We went to a steakhouse in downtown Chicago. The kind of place with white tablecloths and wine lists thicker than novels. I ordered the most expensive steak on the menu and a bottle of wine that cost $200. Ethan raised his glass. "To women who refuse to apologize for taking up space. To consequences catching up with people who deserve them." The prosecution offered my father a plea deal. Plead guilty to reduce charges, serve 18 months minimum, pay full restitution, and cooperate with the investigation. The alternative was going to trial where he faced up to 10 years in federal prison if convicted on all counts. His lawyer advised taking the deal. My father refused. "I won't plead guilty when my own daughter is the one who turned me in out of spite," he told the lawyer, who told the prosecutor, who told the FBI agent who'd worked my case, who called to inform me. "Your father seems to think this is a personal attack rather than a legal consequence of his actions," Agent Morrison said. "He's claiming you fabricated evidence because you're jealous of your sister. He's welcome to try to prove that in court. Every piece of documentation I provided is authentic and verifiable. I know. We've confirmed everything. I'm just warning you that if this goes to trial, his defense will likely attack your character and motives. Let them. I have nothing to hide." The trial date was set for 4 months out. In the meantime, my father's employer filed a civil suit seeking damages and restitution. The local news picked up the story. A respected accountant arrested for embezzling over $100,000 to fund his daughter's art career, while his other daughter worked to support herself. It wasn't national news, but in Chicago's business community, it was enough. My phone rang constantly with reporters asking for comments. I declined every request. The evidence would speak for itself. I didn't need to perform my pain for public consumption. 3 months before the trial, Vanessa's landlord in Brooklyn evicted her for non-payment of rent. She'd been living in a studio apartment that cost $4,200 a month, covered by deposits from my father that had obviously stopped when he was arrested. She had no savings, no backup plan, no ability to support herself without stolen money. She moved back to my mother's house, which was in foreclosure proceedings. My parents had taken out a home equity line of credit years ago to finance Vanessa's Paris education. With my father's income gone and legal fees mounting, they couldn't make payments. They had 60 days to vacate. My mother sent me one last message. "Your sister is living in her childhood bedroom again, crying every night because her entire career is ruined. The house your father and I spent 30 years in is being taken by the bank. We'll have nothing. Is this what you wanted? Does it make you happy to see your family destroyed?" I blocked her number and didn't respond. What I wanted was for them to understand that choices have consequences, that you can't build one daughter's success on the systematic neglect and exploitation of another, that the daughter they dismissed as fine was actually the strongest one all along. The trial lasted 6 days. The prosecution presented my documentation, bank statements showing the fraudulent transactions, testimony from my father's employer detailing the fake vendor scheme, and forensic accounting that traced every stolen dollar. The evidence was overwhelming and methodical. I'd made sure of that. I testified on day 3. My father's defense attorney, a sharp woman in her 50s named Catherine Webb, tried to paint me as vengeful. "Isn't it true that you were angry your parents missed your wedding?" she asked. "Yes. And that anger motivated you to fabricate these allegations? I didn't fabricate anything. The bank statements are real. The fake vendor invoices are real. The shell companies my father created are real. My anger doesn't change the facts. But your anger does explain why you, an accountant with access to your father's financial information, suddenly decided to report him after your wedding. I reported him after my wedding, because that's when I finally understood that my parents would never see me as equal to my sister. That realization gave me clarity about what I'd been avoiding for years. My father was committing crimes, and I had a professional and ethical obligation to report it. Professional obligation? Or personal revenge? I looked directly at the jury. Can it be both? Is revenge somehow less valid when the person being held accountable actually committed the crimes? The prosecutor objected, but I saw several jurors nodding. They understood. Sometimes revenge is just another word for justice. My father testified on day 5. He admitted to creating the fake vendors, to the shell companies, to systematically stealing from his employer for 8 years, but he claimed it was justified. I had a daughter with extraordinary talent, he told the jury. Vanessa could have been one of the great artists of her generation. She needed support. Financial backing to develop her gift. My other daughter never needed that kind of help. She was always independent, always capable of taking care of herself. I made choices to support the child who needed me most. His lawyer tried to spin it as a father making sacrifices for his children. The prosecution dismantled that narrative in minutes. You weren't sacrificing, the prosecutor said during cross-examination. You were stealing from your employer, from your colleagues who worked honestly, and from taxpayers. Since you didn't report any of the stolen income, those aren't sacrifices, those are crimes. On the 6th day, the jury deliberated for 4 hours before returning with guilty verdicts on all counts: wire fraud, theft, money laundering, tax evasion. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. My father's face crumpled as the verdicts were read. My mother, sitting in the gallery, let out a sob. Vanessa wasn't there. She'd moved to Los Angeles 2 weeks before the trial, claiming she needed to escape the scandal and rebuild her career. Really, she was running from the revelation that everything she'd accomplished had been funded by crime. At the sentencing hearing, my father's lawyer presented letters from friends and former colleagues attesting to his character. My mother read a statement about their financial hardship and his remorse. Vanessa sent a video statement from California, crying as she talked about how much she'd needed her father's support and how she'd had no idea the money was stolen. The judge was unmoved. Mr. Richard, you systematically stole from your employer for 8 years, using your position of trust to commit fraud. You showed no remorse until you were caught, and even now your primary concern seems to be justification rather than accountability. The law requires punishment that reflects the severity of your crimes. He sentenced my father to 4 years in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, and full restitution of $112,000 plus interest. He would serve at least 85% of the sentence before being eligible for release. My father was taken into custody immediately. My mother collapsed in the courtroom, dramatic and attention-seeking even in crisis. I watched from the back row, feeling absolutely nothing. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed me. I'd prepared a statement with Ethan's help. I read it calmly. Justice has been served. My father committed crimes, and he's being held accountable. I hope this sends a message that white-collar crime isn't victimless, and that family relationships don't excuse illegal behavior. I have no further comments. One reporter shouted, "Do you regret turning in your father?" No, I said simply. I regret that it was necessary. 3 weeks after the sentencing, my parents' house sold at auction. My mother moved in with her sister in Wisconsin, 3 hours away. She stopped trying to contact me. I heard through relatives that she blamed me for everything, that she'd told everyone I was cruel and vindictive, that I destroyed the family out of jealousy. Let her believe that. It was easier than admitting she'd enabled my father's crimes because they funded her favorite daughter's lifestyle. Vanessa sent one final email from California. "I'll never forgive you for what you did to Dad. Never. You've destroyed our family because you couldn't stand that I was more special than you. I hope you're happy living your boring little life knowing you put your father in prison over money. That's all you've ever cared about. Money and rules and being right. You're not even a person. You're just a calculating machine." I printed the email and put it in a folder labeled Family. Then I blocked her email address. If she wanted to rebuild her art career, she'd have to do it honestly, with her own money, her own effort. No more stolen funds, no more parents sacrificing their integrity to support her dreams. The calculating machine had dismantled everything they'd built on a foundation of crime and favoritism, and I slept perfectly every single night. 2 years after my father went to prison, my life looked nothing like the one I'd imagined. Ethan and I had bought a house in a better neighborhood, a modern build with clean lines and a home office where I could work remotely when I wanted. I'd been promoted to senior director at my firm, managing a team of 15 accountants. My income had nearly doubled. I'd also started consulting on the side for businesses looking to improve their financial controls and prevent fraud. Turns out, being the accountant who caught her own father stealing made me an expert on identifying red flags and building ethical financial systems. I charged premium rates and had more clients than I could handle. Ethan's career had flourished too. He'd launched a new startup with 2 former colleagues, developing software for small businesses. It was growing steadily, profitable from year 1. We talked about starting a family soon, the kind of family where both children would be valued equally, where success wouldn't be measured by who needed more attention. My father was released on supervised probation after serving 3 years. He moved to a small town in Indiana, working as a bookkeeper for a nonprofit that hired formerly incarcerated people. He'd lost his CPA license permanently. The professional life he'd built over 40 years was gone. I never contacted him. He sent one letter through his parole officer, which I returned unopened. My mother stayed in Wisconsin with her sister. I heard she'd gotten a part-time job at a grocery store to help with expenses. She posted on social media occasionally, pictures of gardens and bland inspirational quotes, never mentioning her family or what had happened. She'd lost most of her friends after the trial. Nobody wanted to be associated with the mother who'd enabled her husband's crimes to fund one daughter's dreams while neglecting the other. Vanessa was still in Los Angeles, working as a barista and taking community college art classes. Her Instagram, which I checked once out of curiosity, showed a much more modest life. Small apartment, thrift store clothes, posts about budgeting and financial stress. She'd tried to restart her art career but discovered that talent without funding doesn't go far, and her name was still associated with scandal. Galleries didn't want to touch her. I felt no satisfaction in her struggle, but I felt no guilt either. She'd built a life on money stolen from hardworking people. That life collapsing wasn't my fault. It was the natural consequence of its fraudulent foundation. On the 3rd anniversary of my wedding, the wedding my parents missed for Vanessa's Milan gallery opening that got canceled, Ethan and I renewed our vows. We did it small this time. Just us and our closest friends at a venue overlooking Lake Michigan. No stress, no family drama. Just two people who'd chosen each other and built something real. Afterward, one of my friends asked if I'd ever reconcile with my family. Never, I said without hesitation. They made their choices, I made mine. We all live with the consequences. Don't you miss them at all? I miss the idea of them. The parents I wish I'd had, the sister who could have been a friend. But the people they actually were? The ones who systematically neglected me, stole money to fund favorites, and blamed me for their own criminal choices? No, I don't miss them at all. A few months ago, I received a message through LinkedIn from a woman I didn't know. Her father had embezzled from his company to fund his son's business ventures while she worked multiple jobs to support herself. She'd read articles about my case and wanted advice on whether to report him. We met for coffee, and I walked her through the process I'd followed, the documentation I'd gathered, the decision tree of choosing truth over family loyalty. Do you regret it? She asked. Not once, I said. The people who prioritize one child over another don't deserve protection when their choices become criminal. And the child they dismissed as fine deserves to be more than fine. She deserves to thrive. That woman reported her father 6 months later. He was arrested, prosecuted, and convicted. She sent me flowers with a card that said, "Thank you for showing me that protecting myself isn't selfish." I keep that card in my office. It reminds me that refusing to be diminished isn't cruelty. It's survival. It's strength. It's refusing to let people who harmed you define your worth or limit your success. Last month, Ethan came home with news that his company had been acquired for a significant sum. We were suddenly wealthier than we'd ever imagined. That night, over expensive champagne, he asked what I wanted to do with our portion of the acquisition money. "I want to establish a scholarship fund," I said, "for students whose families can't or won't support their education. The ones who take out loans because their parents prioritized other children. The ones who work full-time while going to school because nobody thinks they need help." "That's perfect," he said. "We'll call it the Independent Daughter Scholarship." We launched it this spring, 5 full-ride scholarships for undergraduate students who are paying their own way through school. The application doesn't ask about family income or why parents aren't helping. It asks about resilience, independence, and what they'll do with freedom from financial stress. I read every application personally. Some of them make me cry. Stories of neglect, favoritism, families who invested everything in golden children while practical children were told to figure it out themselves. Each one reminds me that I wasn't alone in my experience, that my parents' treatment wasn't some unique cruelty, but a pattern that damages countless families. We awarded the first 5 scholarships last month. One recipient, a young woman named Harper, sent me a thank you note that said, "I've been telling myself I'm fine for so long. I forgot that I deserve to be more than fine. Thank you for believing I deserve better." That's the legacy I want. Not revenge, though I got that too. But proof that the children who are dismissed as fine, who are told they don't need help because they're strong enough to survive anything, deserve to be celebrated just as much as the fragile ones who demand all the attention. My parents taught me to be independent by refusing to be there for me. They thought they were condemning me to a lesser life. Instead, they freed me to build something they never imagined possible. I'm 30 now, married to someone who sees me clearly, successful in my career, financially secure, surrounded by chosen family who show up consistently, living in a home I bought with money I earned honestly, building scholarships for others who were told they didn't need help. Meanwhile, my father lives in a small Indiana town, forever marked as a convicted felon who stole to fund his daughter's dreams. My mother works at a grocery store, estranged from most of her family and friends. Vanessa serves coffee in Los Angeles, her art career destroyed by the revelation that it was never earned honestly. They lost everything. I gained everything. Not because I was cruel, but because I refused to protect people who'd spent 28 years dismissing my worth. That's not revenge, that's justice. And it tastes exactly as sweet as I always imagined it would.